The neon sign of the Gilded Oak flickered against the relentless gray of the December sky, casting a warm, inviting glow that seemed to mock Lucas Miller. He stood on the sidewalk for a moment, brushing snow off the shoulders of his coat. It was a good coat, wool, sturdy, a dark charcoal gray, but it was 6 years old, bought when his wife Sarah was still alive, before the hospital bills, before the funeral costs, before he became a single father trying to keep a small carpentry business afloat in an economy that preferred cheap plastic to handcrafted wood. Lucas checked his reflection in the darkened window. At 32, he looked older. There were fine lines etched around his eyes, born from sleepless nights and the constant, grinding pressure of being the sole provider for his 7-year-old daughter, Chloe. He ran a hand through his dark hair, checking his watch. 6:50 p.m. 10 minutes early. "You look handsome, Daddy," Chloe had whispered that morning, fixing his collar with her small, sticky hands. Like a prince. He didn't feel like a prince. He felt like an imposter. The Gilded Oak was the kind of place where a steak cost more than his weekly grocery budget. But his best friend, Mike, had insisted. "She's special, Luke. A friend of my wife's cousin. Just one dinner. You've been a monk for 4 years. Get out there." Lucas pushed open the heavy oak door and stepped inside. The warmth hit him instantly, smelling of roasted garlic, expensive perfume, and old money. "Reservation for Miller," Lucas said to the hostess, a young woman with perfectly arched eyebrows who scanned him up and down. Her gaze lingered on his rough, calloused hand that had spent the day sanding pine and fixing drywall. "Table 14. In the back," she said, her voice tight, as if she were doing him a favor. Lucas walked through the crowded dining room. He saw men in tailored suits and women in shimmering dresses. He felt the familiar weight of social invisibility. In this world, he was the help. He was the guy you called when your roof leaked, not the guy you had dinner with. He found the table. It was secluded, tucked into a private alcove. He sat down, his heart hammering a nervous rhythm against his ribs. He ordered a water. Just water. He couldn't risk running up the bill before his date even arrived. At 7:05 p.m., a woman approached. She was stunning. She wore a sleek red dress that looked like it cost more than Lucas's truck. Her blonde hair was a cascading waterfall of perfection, and her jewelry caught the candlelight with aggressive sparkles. Lucas stood up, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. "Ah, you must be Jessica," she said, cutting him off. She didn't smile. She pulled out her own chair and sat down, dropping a designer clutch onto the table. "Right, Jessica," Mike said. "Mike said you were rugged," Jessica interrupted again, her eyes narrowing as she inspected him. "He didn't mention you were blue-collar." Lucas felt the heat rise up his neck. "I own a carpentry workshop. We do custom furniture and restoration." "Manual labor," she corrected, picking up the menu and grimacing. "Look, let's make this quick. I have a gala to get to at 9. I agreed to this because Mike's wife is annoying, but I'm looking for someone with ambition. Stability." "I have ambition," Lucas said, his voice low but steady. "I'm raising a daughter on my own. I built my business from the ground up." Jessica laughed. It was a cold, brittle sound. "Raising a child alone isn't ambition, honey. It's baggage. And building a business? In this economy, you're probably one bad month away from bankruptcy." It stung because it was true. The winter had been harsh. Contracts were drying up. He was one bad month away. "I think," Lucas said, placing his napkin on the table, dignity stiffening his spine, "that we're done here. Finally, we agree on something," Jessica sneered. She stood up, smoothing her dress. "Next time, tell your friend to screen better. I don't date charity cases." She turned on her heel and walked away, leaving a trail of expensive floral scent and humiliation in her wake. Lucas sat there, frozen. The restaurant was buzzing around him, laughter and clinking glasses, but he was trapped in a bubble of silence. The shame was a physical weight in his gut. He had put on his best suit. He had promised Chloe he would try. And he had been dismissed in under 3 minutes as baggage. He signaled the waiter. "Check, please." "You haven't ordered, sir," the waiter said, looking confused. "I know. Just for the water." "Sir, there's a minimum seating charge of—" The front door of the restaurant burst open. A gust of freezing wind tore through the room, causing patrons to gasp and clutch their napkins. Stumbling through the entrance was a figure that looked like it had been fighting a war with the elements. She was soaked. Her black hair was plastered to her pale face. She was wearing a heavy, oversized wool coat that was dripping melting snow onto the pristine floor. She was breathing hard, her chest heaving, her cheeks flushed a violent red from the cold. The hostess stepped forward to block her. "Miss, you can." The woman ignored her. Her eyes, wide and desperate, scanned the room. They locked onto Lucas. She didn't walk, she marched. She navigated through the tables, ignoring the stares of the wealthy patrons who looked at her like she was a stray dog. She reached Lucas's table and gripped the back of the empty chair, her knuckles white. "I'm so sorry," she wheezed, her voice raspy. "My car. The battery died on the interstate. My phone died. No Ubers. I walked. I ran the last mile." Lucas stared at her. She was shivering violently. Her boots were caked in slush. She looked nothing like Jessica. She looked like a disaster. Lucas stammered. "You walked? In this storm?" "I promised," she said, her teeth chattering. She looked him dead in the eye, and he saw a fierce, burning intensity there. "I promised I'd be here. I'm Elena. I'm your date." Lucas was stunned. "Elena, Mike's cousin's friend," she managed, finally collapsing into the chair Jessica had vacated moments ago. "Please tell me you haven't eaten yet. I think I might faint if I don't get some bread." Lucas's instincts kicked in. The humiliation of the last 5 minutes evaporated, replaced by concern. "Waiter," he called out, his voice commanding this time. "Bring a blanket. And hot tea. And the bread basket." Now, the waiter, sensing the shift in Lucas's demeanor, hurried off. "You walked 2 miles?" Lucas asked, reaching across the table to take her hands. They were freezing, like blocks of ice. Without thinking, he began to rub them between his warm, rough palms. Elena looked down at their hands, his large, scarred, working-man hands enveloping her delicate, freezing ones. She didn't pull away. She leaned into the warmth. "I couldn't call," she said softly, "and I hate breaking promises. I knew you were waiting. I was about to leave," Lucas admitted. "I thought, well, someone else sat here." It didn't go well. Elena looked up, her dark eyes searching his face. "Did she hurt your feelings?" "She called me a charity case with baggage," Lucas said with a dry chuckle. Elena's expression darkened. "Then she's an idiot. And blind." The waiter returned with a thick wool throw and a steaming pot of tea. Lucas stood up and draped the blanket around Elena's shoulders, tucking it in tight. For a second, he smelled her scent, not expensive perfume, but something clean like rain and vanilla, mixed with the sharp ozone smell of snow. "Thank you," she whispered. As she warmed up, Lucas really looked at her. Under the wet hair and the exhaustion, she had a gentle beauty. But more than that, she had a listening face. They talked. And for the first time in 4 years, Lucas didn't feel like he was interviewing for a job he wasn't qualified for. He told her about the carpentry business. He expected her to sneer, but instead, she asked about wood grains. "Walnut is my favorite," she said, tearing into a roll of bread. "It's stubborn, right? But it finishes beautifully." "It is," Lucas smiled, surprised. "Most people just want painted MDF these days. Cheap stuff." "Cheap stuff breaks," Elena said firmly. "Solid things last. Like family." The conversation turned to Chloe. Lucas pulled out his phone, the screen cracked in the corner, and showed her a picture of his daughter. "She's beautiful," Elena said, her voice softening. "She has your eyes." "She's my world," Lucas said. It's been hard. Her mom passed 4 years ago. Christmas Eve." He waited for the pity, the awkward silence. Elena didn't look away. She reached out and touched his forearm. "My mom died 2 years ago," she said. "Ovarian cancer. I spent the last year in hospitals, sleeping in chairs. I know the sound of those machines. I know the silence after. It was a bridge. A dark, sad bridge, but they crossed it together. I have a little sister," Elena added. "Sophie. She's 18. I'm raising her now. My dad left a long time ago. So it's just us. I'm not a single mom, but I get the pressure. The fear that you're going to mess it up." "That's it," Lucas exhaled, feeling a weight lift off his chest. The fear. I look at Chloe and I just want to give her everything, but sometimes I feel like I'm failing. I drive a truck that's falling apart. We live in a small rental. I'm not. I'm not a rich man, Elena. Elena smiled, and this time it reached her eyes. It was dazzling. Lucas, you waited for a blind date in a blizzard. You warmed my hands before you worried about yourself. You speak about your daughter like she's a queen. You are rich in everything that actually matters. They stayed until the restaurant closed. The storm raged outside, burying the city in white, but inside that alcove, a small fire had been lit. When the bill came, Lucas reached for it instinctively. He knew it would hurt his bank account, but he wanted to pay. Elena put her hand over his. Let's split it. No, Mike invited you, but... Lucas, she said firmly. We're partners in this crime. Split it. He walked her to the curb. His truck, an old battered Ford, was the only vehicle left in the lot besides a few luxury SUVs. Can I drive you home? He asked. Your car is still on the highway. I'd love that, she said. The heater in his truck rattled, but it worked. As they drove through the silent, snowy streets, Elena looked out the window. Thank you, she said as he pulled up to a modest apartment complex on the edge of town. Can I see you again? Lucas asked. The question terrified him. Elena turned to him. Saturday. Chloe told me via Mike that she likes gingerbread. I make a terrible gingerbread man, but I'm willing to learn. Saturday, Lucas agreed. He watched her walk into the building. He didn't know that Elena Vance didn't live in that apartment complex. She walked through the lobby, out the back exit, and into a waiting Blacktown car where a driver had been sleeping. Home, Miss Vance, the driver asked. Yes, James. To the estate, Elena said, looking back at the spot where Lucas's rusty truck had disappeared. And James? Cancel my meetings for Saturday. The week dragged. Lucas threw himself into his work. He had a deadline for a custom dining set for a client who was already 3 weeks late on the deposit. His back ached, and the bills were piling up on the kitchen counter, red ink urgent notices. But Saturday came. Elena arrived at Lucas's small duplex rental at 10 a.m. She brought a bag of flour, molasses, and a box of chocolates for Chloe. Chloe was shy at first, hiding behind Lucas's leg. But Elena didn't push. She sat on the floor, ignoring the sawdust that Lucas hadn't quite managed to sweep up, and started laying out the ingredients. I heard a rumor, Elena whispered to the air, that the best gingerbread decorators in the world live in this house. Chloe giggled. I'm good at gumdrops. Gumdrops are critical structural components, Elena said seriously. Within an hour, the kitchen was a disaster zone of flour and laughter. Lucas watched from the doorway, a mug of coffee in his hand, feeling a strange tightness in his throat. It had been so long since a woman's laughter had filled this house. Elena wasn't afraid to get messy. She had flour on her nose. She teased Lucas about his lack of icing skills. She listened to Chloe's rambling stories about school. Later, they went out to the garage, Lucas's workshop. This is where the magic happens, Lucas said, feeling self-conscious. It was cold, smelling of cedar and turpentine. Tools hung on pegboards. Unfinished furniture sat under tarps. Elena walked over to a half-finished rocking chair. She ran her hand over the armrest. This is hand-carved. Yeah. Cherry wood. It's exquisite, Lucas. She looked at him. You're an artist. I'm a carpenter. You're undervalued, she corrected. Suddenly, her phone buzzed. She glanced at it and frowned. A shadow crossed her face. Everything okay? Lucas asked. Work, she sighed. Just numbers. They don't add up. You're an accountant. Lucas asked. That's what Mike had said. Something like that, Elena said evasively. I work in a corporate finance. It's boring. Spreadsheets. Angry bosses. She didn't tell him that she was the CFO of Vance Global, one of the largest real estate development firms in the state. She didn't tell him that the numbers she was looking at were the acquisition costs for the very neighborhood they were standing in. She didn't tell him that her board of directors was pressuring her to approve a brutal gentrification plan that would bulldoze small rentals like this one. She looked at Lucas, poor honest, hard-working Lucas, and felt a wave of guilt. She was the enemy. He didn't even know it. Lucas, she said suddenly, if you had the chance to do anything with this shop, to expand, what would you do? Lucas looked around the cramped garage. I'd hire 2 apprentices. I'd buy a proper CNC machine so I could do volume work without losing the hand-finished quality. I'd start a line of affordable, solid wood furniture for normal families. Stuff that doesn't fall apart. Honest work for honest people, Elena mused. Exactly. But, he shrugged, dreams are free. CNC machines cost 40 grand. Elena nodded, filing that number away in her mind. 2 days before Christmas, disaster struck. It started with a phone call. The client for the custom dining set, a $3,000 job that Lucas was banking on to pay rent, canceled. We found something cheaper at IKEA, the man said on the phone. Sorry, buddy. Lucas sat on the edge of his bed, head in his hands. He had $400 in his account. Rent was due on the 1st. He had promised Chloe a specific Lego set for Christmas, and now. Then the weather turned. A bomb cyclone hit Colorado. Temperatures plummeted to 20 below zero. The snow was blinding. Lucas was in his workshop trying to salvage scrap wood to sell as firewood when his phone rang again. It was the school. Mr. Miller? This is Principal Skinner. The field trip bus, it stuck. Lucas's blood ran cold. Stuck? Where? I-70. The pass? The engine died in the cold. The heaters are failing. Emergency services are overwhelmed. They're saying it could be 4 hours before they reach them. Chloe, stuck in a freezing metal box on the highway. I'm coming, Lucas roared. He grabbed his keys and ran to his truck. He turned the key. Click, click, whir, click. The cold had killed his battery. The alternator had been dying for months, and the freeze finished it. No, no, no. Lucas slammed his hands against the steering wheel. He screamed in frustration. He jumped out, popping the hood, but he knew it was hopeless. He was trapped. His daughter was freezing 10 miles away, and he was powerless. He fell to his knees in the snow, the biting wind tearing at his face. He felt like the ultimate failure. A father who couldn't provide. A father who couldn't protect. He pulled out his phone. His fingers were shaking so hard he could barely type. He didn't call Mike. Mike was in Florida. He didn't call 911. They were already busy. He called the only other person who had looked at Chloe with love. Elena. Lucas. What's wrong? You sound. It's Chloe. The bus. I-70. My truck is dead. I can't get to her. His voice broke into a sob. She's freezing. Elena. Where are you? Her voice was steel. Home? But stay there. Put on your boots. Walk to the end of the driveway. Give me 6 minutes. Elena, the roads are closed. You can't. 6 minutes, Lucas. The line went dead. Lucas stood at the end of his driveway, pacing like a caged animal. The snow was coming down horizontally. Exactly 6 minutes later, a roar cut through the wind. It wasn't a car. It was the heavy, chopping sound of a rotor. Lucas looked up. A sleek, black helicopter with the logo Vance Global on the side was descending into the empty parking lot of the church across the street. The downdraft kicked up a blinding cloud of snow. The side door slid open. Elena jumped out. She wasn't wearing her accountant clothes. She was wearing a high-performance tactical winter suit. She ran across the street, grabbed Lucas by the jacket, and pulled him toward the chopper. Get in, she screamed over the noise. Lucas stumbled in. The interior was leather and heated. A pilot in a headset nodded to him. Elena? What? Whose chopper is this? Lucas yelled as they lifted off, the ground falling away. Mine, she said. She handed him a headset. We're going to the bus. Yours? But you said, we can talk about my resume later, she said, her eyes locked on the horizon. Right now, we get the kid. The helicopter flew low over the snarled highway. Cars were buried in drifts. They spotted the yellow school bus, angled dangerously on the shoulder, half covered in snow. Set it down on the highway, Elena ordered the pilot. There's a clearing behind the semi-truck. It's tight, Ms. Vance, the pilot warned. Do it. They touched down. Lucas didn't wait for the rotors to stop. He leaped out, Elena right behind him. They pried the emergency door of the bus open. Inside, 30 children and 2 terrified teachers were huddled together, wrapped in coats, their breath visible in the freezing air. Daddy! Chloe's scream pierced the gloom. She was in the back, her lips blue, shivering uncontrollably. Lucas scooped her up, wrapping her inside his own coat. He buried his face in her cold neck, sobbing with relief. I've got you. I've got you, baby. Elena was already moving. She was organizing the teachers. We take the coldest ones first. The chopper can fit 6 kids plus the adults. We do trips. My security team is coming in SUVs from the east side to get the rest. She took charge with the authority of a general. She wasn't the soft girl making gingerbread. She was a CEO accustomed to moving mountains. Lucas watched her as he held his daughter. He saw the power she wielded. And for the first time, he felt a different kind of cold. The chasm between them wasn't just money. It was universes. 2 hours later, everyone was safe. The kids were at the hospital, getting checked out. Chloe was fine, just cold and scared. Lucas sat in the waiting room, holding a cup of bad hospital coffee. Elena walked in. She looked tired. The last kid just went home, she said, sitting next to him. Lucas didn't look at her. Vance Global, he said quietly. As in, the company buying up the West Side? Elena stiffened. Yes. So, you're not an accountant. I am. I'm the chief financial officer. And the majority shareholder. Lucas stood up and walked to the window. Why did you lie? I didn't lie. I just omitted. Lucas, do you know what it's like dating in my world? Men see the net worth, not the woman. They want a trophy or an investor. When I walked into that restaurant and saw how you were treated, I wanted to be just Elena, not Elena Vance. You saw me struggling, Lucas said, his voice bitter. You came to my house. You saw my broken truck, my empty fridge. Did you pity me? Was I your charity project? No. Elena stood up, her eyes flashing fire. I fell in love with you, you idiot. The room went silent. I fell in love with a man who stood by his daughter. The man who builds beautiful things with his hands while the rest of the world buys plastic crap. The man who warmed my hands when I was nothing but a wet stranger. She stepped closer. My money doesn't make me better than you, Lucas. It just makes me lonely. Until now. Lucas looked at her. He saw the vulnerability she was trying to hide behind her power. I can't offer you anything, Elena, he whispered. I'm a carpenter with debt. I don't need you to offer me things, she said. I can buy my own things. I need you to offer me a home. A real one. Like the one you built for Chloe. Christmas Day. The snow had stopped. Lucas and Chloe were in their living room. There was a knock at the door. It was Elena. But she wasn't alone. Behind her were 2 delivery trucks. What is this? Lucas asked. I have a business proposition, Elena said, stepping inside. She handed him a thick folder. Lucas opened it. It was a contract. Not a handout. A contract. Vance Global Exclusive Vendor Agreement. Vendor Miller Custom Woodworks. Scope. Design and fabrication of all lobby furniture for the new Highlands development. Advance payment, $150,000. I'm not taking charity, Lucas said, his pride flaring. Read the fine print, Miller, Elena smirked. I expect delivery in 6 months. And the penalties for lateness are brutal. This isn't charity. This is me hiring the best carpenter in the city because I'm tired of cheap crap in my buildings. She pointed to the trucks outside. And that is a CNC machine. And some new tools. Consider it a signing bonus. Deducted from your future earnings, of course. Lucas looked at the contract. It was life-changing. It was dignity. It was a future where he didn't have to worry about the heat being turned off. Why? He asked. Because I believe in the product, she said. Then she stepped closer and took his hand. And I believe in the man. Suddenly, a car pulled up behind the trucks. A flashy red sports car. Jessica, the date from the first night, stepped out. She had tracked Lucas down, apparently having heard from Mike that he was seeing someone. She looked at the Vance Global trucks, then at Lucas, then at Elena. Lucas. Jessica called out, looking confused. What's going on? Who are these people? Elena turned. She recognized the red dress. You must be Jessica, Elena said, her voice cool and polite. I am. Who are you? Jessica sneered, looking at Elena's simple jeans and sweater. Elena didn't answer. She just turned to the foreman unloading the truck. Steve, make sure the machine is leveled properly. Yes, Ms. Vance, the foreman shouted. Jessica froze. Vance? Like? Elena Vance. The one and only, Elena said. She wrapped her arm around Lucas's waist. And this is Lucas, my partner, and exclusive contractor for my next 3 skyscrapers. Jessica's jaw dropped. She looked from the billionaire heiress to the carpenter she had mocked. The color drained from her face. The regret was palpable, thick, and suffocating. Ah, Lucas, I think we got off on the wrong foot, Jessica stammered, stepping forward. Lucas looked at Jessica. He remembered the shame he felt at the restaurant. Then he looked at Elena, who was looking at him with pride. We didn't get off on the wrong foot, Jessica, Lucas said calmly. You showed me exactly who you are. And she showed me exactly who she is. He squeezed Elena's hand. Now, if you'll excuse us, we have gingerbread to eat. He closed the door. 1 year later, the Gilded Oak was crowded. Lucas sat at table 14. He was wearing a new suit, bespoke, tailored, navy blue. He looked younger, the stress lines around his eyes smoothed out by a year of security and love. Elena walked in. She was radiant. She sat down. Sorry I'm late. Board meeting ran long. I waited. Lucas smiled. I'd wait forever. So she said, leaning forward. How is the new workshop? Busy. We just hired 3 more guys. And I finished a special project. Lucas reached into his pocket. He didn't pull out a ring bought with her money. He pulled out a small, hand-carved wooden box. Walnut, polished to a mirror's shine. Inside was a diamond ring. Not the biggest in the room, but paid for with his own sweat, his own success, his own money. Elena gasped. You saved my daughter, Lucas said. You saved my business. But mostly, you saved me from believing I wasn't enough. He got down on one knee. The restaurant went silent. Elena Vance, will you be my date? Forever. Tears streamed down the face of the most powerful woman in Colorado real estate. I'm your date, she whispered. I'm your wife. I'm yours. As they kissed, and the restaurant erupted in applause, Lucas looked out the window. The snow was falling again, soft and gentle. He wasn't the invisible man anymore. He was a father, a husband, and a king in his own castle.